Started, and I am going to kick this over to Serena so she can say a few things about why we are all here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Serena. I'm on the Uqora team, and I'm so happy to see the COA and Uqora communities together today. For those who are new to Uqora, welcome. We specialize in UTI education, UTI relief products, and proactive urinary tract health supplements. I'm so glad that you all found our November webinar series for Bladder Health Month. And we're actually also counting down the days to November 21st, which is National UTI Awareness Day. This is observed every year on November 21st and was actually created by Uqora in 2020. So if you're interested in learning more about Uqora, you can head to uqora.com. I'm so excited to learn with you all today. So without further ado, I'll pass it back to our lovely host for the day from COA.
Thank you, Serena. That's so good to know. Congrats to you, Cora, on that Awareness Day. I will definitely be celebrating that. Okay, who am I? My name is Pallavi. I am a licensed therapist. I'm also an emotional fitness instructor here at COA. I've also had my share of struggling through chronic cystitis issues in my life. So I understand where a lot of you might be coming from and what kind of frustrations you're dealing with. So, what I'm going to really be talking about today, though, is this term mental health, because a lot of things can impact our mental health. A lot of things can progress and contribute to greater mental health, but all of those practices tend to seem a little bit vague. We don't really know what that means. So I'm going to shed as much light as I can about all of that in the next hour. So let me tell you a little bit about COA also. COA is your online gym for mental health. So what that means is we offer live emotional fitness classes, an on-demand content library where you can search for topics based on your concerns and needs. And all of this is rooted in community because, as you can see, we are all here together. We likely have some similar things that we're working through, and connecting with each other on that can make this kind of mental health work and practice way more fulfilling. So COA has a lot of resources to offer you just that. We've also partnered with a lot of companies and organizations and on things like leadership, but also just setting up mental health practices, whether you work on a team or you're on your own. So we have a lot of people who have been with us at COA who have taken stuff away from us, and it is all grounded in this. So these are our 7 traits of emotional fitness. And we found, our co-founder actually found from her research that these are what we need to encompass proactive mental health. So I like to think of these, since we're your gym for mental health, I like to think of these as your different emotional muscle groups, but I'm going to talk more about these in a sec. These all inform all of our different kinds of content. We have content on burnout, setting boundaries. So all of that is rooted in those traits. So let me just let you know how today is going to go. As I mentioned earlier, cameras are optional. If you'd like to be on camera, cool, it's not required. I do encourage you, though, to share thoughts you're having, ideas, +1 things that you like. If I say something that resonates with you, utilize that chat. That is how we stay connected as a community here. I'm going to also prompt you to share some things in chat. You don't have to wait for me to be chatting, but I'd love to hear your thoughts whenever I do that. And we're just going to keep everybody else's shares confidential to this room for our safety and privacy. You are also going to get an email with some follow-up resources from today. But if you want to take notes, I'm all for that. I love being a note-taking nerd. Okay, the way that we first start our emotional fitness workouts is by checking our emotional resting heart rate. So what I'm going to have you all do is please head over to the chat for me and chat in 1 word to describe how you're feeling right now in this moment. So it could be anything, and it might take you a moment just to check in and understand what you are feeling right now. But for example, I am feeling hopeful today. Go ahead and let me know in that chat, how are you doing? Maybe this is the first time you've asked yourself that question today or in a while. So this is your moment. Relieved. I love that, Lynn. We haven't even started talking, but Lynn is already relieved because she's here with all of us together. Amazing. I love that. Keep those shares coming in. Again, this is your moment to tune in to yourself. Faithful, hopeful to learn, also relieved. Oh, this is excellent. I love seeing that. Cool. Keep those coming in. The next thing I am going to ask of you is this. I'm going to launch a little poll here, and I just want to get a sense from all of you. This is absolutely anonymous, so I don't know who's answering what, but I just want to get a sense of how much this tends to take up your brain space. How worried are you about managing your physical health conditions like chronic UTIs, cystitis, whatever it is? Let me know in that poll that has just popped up on your screen. And again, this is totally anonymous. Okay, I've got almost everybody responding. Waiting on a few more of you. So let's give this another 5 seconds to end this poll. And in 4, 3, 2, 1, last chance. I'm ending the poll now. Okay, here's what we've got. I'm sharing these results with you. We are kind of everywhere on this spectrum. Some of us are really concerned about it every day. Some of us, we're noticing things changing in our bodies. Maybe we feel a little bit less agency. We're worrying more. Some days I'm worried, some days I'm not. Got a lot of responses. I hear that, like out of sight, out of mind. If I don't have to be worrying about it, why would I want to worry about it? And we've got some of us who aren't thinking about it at all. So let us know what you're doing to achieve that, because that's awesome. But there might be things that you're all doing proactively to manage your condition. And I would imagine that that takes up space in your lives. So as part of that routine, we're also going to talk about what you could be doing to manage your emotions and your mental health around your already established medical and physical routines. So here is how it's going to go. These are the themes that we're going to discuss. I'm going to go over a frequently asked question in this realm and talk about it, but they're generally going to fall into these thematic buckets here. So our needs and goals, routines and rituals, what is self-care, holding boundaries, and motivating and supporting ourselves and others. So let's get started. This is an important question to get us started. So if you're not quite sure where you are, it's hard to know what a routine should look like. And there is no one size fits all answer to this. This is going to be very individual to you. So I hesitate even to use that word should, because there's no such thing. It's going to be based on your needs. So we're going to talk about some signs to pay attention to, but let me just talk about what mental health is, what we're even talking about here. So if you want to be a gold medal Olympian in mental health, not that we're trying to be competitive about it, but there are a lot of things that need to happen in order for the full picture to take place. So it encompasses things like emotional well-being, well-established social supports and relationships. So all of this is really important. How we're surmounting challenges, how we're facing the chronic stress that we're dealing with our conditions. All of that plays a part. So, and not talking about it another way, we're not talking about never feeling pain or hardship, because what we all know is it is likely inevitable that we're going to have to deal with this physical discomfort again, and then that might generate a lot of mental and emotional discomfort. But what we are talking about is, what do we have in place to get through that pain and hardship at whatever pace we can that allows us to be whole people with our feelings, with our relationships intact, doing the things we want to be doing and feeling our best. So we talk about the strength we need to surmount challenges, our resilience. We're talking about how to learn and grow when something kind of hits us and knocks us back. So our histories and backgrounds, our previous experiences with health conditions, our trauma, this is all going to impact how we deal with things mentally and emotionally. And also things like job satisfaction, financial security, and that physical health component is going to impact our mental health. So lots of things coming together here. So, as I mentioned earlier, COA is your gym for mental health. So, we really want you to be thinking about working on your mental health, like going to the gym or exercising, however you like to do that. You don't go to the gym, do one ab workout one time, and then achieve your dream ab pack. So, if you do one thing once or, you try something once, it is not going to achieve your physical or mental health forever. This is ongoing. It's part of our daily lives. So when managing a chronic health condition, there are just some days when we're going to be more up for, sticking to some of our things, and we might have to adjust on other days when rest becomes more important, for instance. So the goal for today is to be really deliberate and intentional about building a routine that makes sense for you and allows for those shifts and changes, so you can be flexible in that. So there's no quick, easy online quiz you can take to assess, am I emotionally fit? But this is a little bit of an inventory that you can do a little self-check on, just thinking about, what are my daily difficulties like? Do they tend to kind of knock me down, or can I get through them? How do I see myself? How do I want to see myself? How are my relationships? How am I at managing emotions when they come up? Not controlling them, not making them go away, but understanding them, welcoming them, and getting through them. What are my healthy habits? What healthy habits do I maybe want to establish? And how do I bounce forward when I have a flare up or a recurrence or something that is a setback or difficulty? So that is what we are talking about. Okay, so all of that probably leads to this next question. Well, how do I even start working on my mental wellness? So I'm going to bring you back to this slide that I showed you before, our 7 traits, thinking about them again as our emotional muscle groups. So all of these are necessary to a functioning body, just like our muscle groups are. We need to be self-aware of our triggers and our traits and biases in order to really work on any of these other ones. Empathy for others is going to help with our relationships, so we feel supported when we need to. Mindfulness is about, how do I sit through this discomfort? How do I get more comfortable with some of it? And that, I mean, emotionally, sitting through physical discomfort is not the scope that I'm talking about, but that is going to impact some of your emotions as well. Curiosity is about, do I get defensive? Do I push people away? How can I be curious instead? Playfulness, because sometimes we are all being very serious about things all the time, and that can heighten our stress. So playfulness is about reducing our stress and allowing for more connection with others. Resilience is what I keep talking about around bouncing forward from our setbacks or things that come our way. And communication, of course, how are we using our words? How are we expressing ourselves and doing things like setting boundaries and speaking up for ourselves? So with all of that in mind, this comes back to you. It's about asking yourself, what would you like more of? Is it more physical movement? Is it better boundaries? Is it about regulating your emotions or deepening connections? Then what are you willing to do to get those things? So remembering that working on our mental health is a lifelong process, we have to remember that it does take work. Some of that work we are willing to do, some of it we're not. It's worth challenging that and pushing our boundaries a little bit where we can. That's what our mindfulness trait is about. But are you willing to put yourself out there or change up your routine or challenge yourself? If not, why? What is getting in your way? What makes it feel difficult? And what is getting in the way now in this moment? What are you prioritizing instead? So the main takeaway here is, in order to work on your mental health, you have to figure out what it is that you want, what is and isn't working for you, and what first steps you can feasibly take that makes sense. Because if you start to throw the whole bucket at this all at once, likely it's not going to stick. So speaking of buckets, here's another way to get at those wants and needs. These 4 buckets can also help us figure out what's missing. So if most of the needs that we're struggling with right now are physical, whether that's rest or safety, sex, shelter, food, water, hygiene, that can be a big stressor. If it's emotional needs, things like love, self-esteem, emotional safety, boundaries, respect, acknowledgement, Social and spiritual needs could be about connection, meaning and purpose, a sense of belonging. And then we've got creative or sensory needs, so expressing ourselves, exploring different parts of our being. So this is not an exhaustive list, and I'm going to show you more models for identifying needs, but I'd love for you all to pop into chat. Of these buckets, which one do you tend to need most right now, especially when managing your health condition? And again, it's okay if it's not on this list. If you're thinking of something else, throw that in there too. I think for me, creative is the one that tends to fall by the wayside first. It's like everything else needs to get addressed, but I'm not actually engaging or, accessing different parts of myself, and that doesn't feel good. So as you're thinking about this and chatting me, the point is every one of us has these different types of needs, and we don't often realize what they are until we notice that they're missing. So step one is to identify what are our needs proactively so that we can make sure they're getting met. Yeah, emotional, physical. Yes, I love seeing this insight here. This is really important. Okay, a bunch of you in that emotional space, maybe not getting the right support, especially when you are struggling. This chronic illness that we are talking about tends to be really isolating. It can get stigmatized. So I definitely hear that. Okay, awesome. Thank you all for sharing. You can keep those shares coming in, but I have another poll for you. Just to get a sense of, as we're talking, I want to understand what you are all already doing to work on your mental health. So you're going to see another poll pop up on your screen, and there are a few options here. Maybe you go to therapy. Maybe you're doing meditation or spiritual practices. Maybe it's making sure that you're connected to others and socializing. Maybe it's, I gotta be exercising every day or every week, whatever it is. Maybe it's a little bit of everything, or maybe you don't even know, and that is fine. Maybe you're not sure which things you're doing that are actually contributing to your mental health. Maybe you're not sure you're doing anything that is helpful. That is all fine. So I want to just know we've got a few more of you who haven't responded. So I'm going to give this another 5-second countdown. Don't overthink it, just whatever comes to mind. We're just trying to get a sense of what folks are doing. And in 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm ending this poll now. And let me show you these results. So a lot of you are doing a little bit of everything. There might be multiple things on this list that you are doing. That's awesome. And it is hopefully working. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too when we've got maybe too much going on and we feel like we have to maintain all of it. So we'll talk about how we can be deliberate, but we've got people in therapy, we've got people meditating, socializing, physical health is a big one. Some of you have to do a little bit of everything, and a couple of you still not sure, and that is fine. I hope that by the end of this, you come away with some ideas. So thank you again for sharing in that poll. So let's keep this cruising here. Next question, how do I figure out what routine will work for me? What are my options? So now that we have a sense of what we want to maybe focus on working out, how do we put that into practice? So here's how it goes. What I was kind of getting at just now was starting small is going to be really important. One thing at a time. So once you're identifying your needs, like, hey, I might need more rest, or I think I might need more support. The first step is, how do I go about getting that? How do I maybe tweak my calendar so that I get more rest time? How do I make more of an effort to put social things on my calendar or reach out to friends and family members or loved ones more regularly? But when we're trying to implement too many things at once, we could end up overwhelming ourselves. And then guess what? We give it all up and the routine doesn't stick at all. So maybe it is just about 5 minutes at the beginning or end of your day to reflect on your feelings. Maybe it's doing your best to take a quick 10-minute walk during a break at work. Next, it is helpful to plan ahead. So this is also about knowing yourself, that self-awareness trait. I know that I tend to feel really low energy in that kind of afternoon slumpy phase. So I try really hard not to schedule really important things during that time because I know that's going to require me to push myself way further than I can. So that's going to be time for different kinds of activities. So knowing yourself, do I need a buddy if I want to, try something new? Let me make sure I have that for myself. What can I take off of my plate that's going to make some of this easier? So this is about information gathering and understanding what is likely to work best and when, so you can set yourself up for success. And as things are going on, you might feel differently, things might change. Keep reflecting on that. A great way to reflect is journaling or just kind of sitting and thinking about these questions like, is this still working for me? Is there anything I want to modify? Am I doing this intentionally or am I doing it on autopilot? So that is why we want to give ourselves the opportunity to adjust if we need to, because we are all changing and growing. No matter how much we feel like we're fixed, we are constantly shifting. Our needs are going to shift. So that means our routines might have to shift. What we're doing to help ourselves out might have to shift. So a lot of us create these kinds of goals or New Year's resolutions, right, that don't stick for one reason or another. And then instead of being kind to ourselves, we might beat ourselves up for failing and then hold ourselves to a more rigid standard next time. That's not going to work well. What we want, what we need, it's all going to have to go along with kindness because we're doing this for ourselves. We're doing this to make ourselves feel better. So the punishment is not going to work toward that goal. So how do we check in on this? Here are some suggestions. It can take, as people say, a few months to get a habit really in place. Even then, though, I always found that number to be arbitrary because for me, a habit staying in place has to be very deliberate all the time. And in order to do that, I need to be connected to the why I'm even wanting to establish this in the first place. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But these are some questions. How am I feeling about this routine? Do I feel stressed about it? If I feel stressed about it, I might need to change something. What might still be missing? I still feel like I wish I could be doing more of this. What is and isn't working? When is a good time to check in again? So this is our accountability moment. All right, now here is one of my favorite slides because I made it. And I think it is a really useful way to think about how do we react or act in the face of some of our warning signs. Now your spectrum here is going to look different and personal to you. But what are those signs? It could be worth kind of creating a visual scale like this for yourselves. But if, for instance, your first sign is when I get irritable and moody and I start snapping at people, that might be a sign that I'm not getting enough emotional support. Maybe I just need to start naming that I'm having some feelings. If I am not feeling motivated, I need to reconnect to my why so that I can get back into my goals and why I want to do them. If I am neglecting some healthy habits, like I'm going to sleep too late, it's aggravating my health conditions, time to set some boundaries. Why am I going to sleep too late? Is it because I'm working too late? Maybe I need to get back into a healthier schedule. If you're feeling that sense of hopelessness, maybe it's about asserting yourself in the areas where you can. I'm going to talk about that when we get to boundary setting. What is important to you and how can you reclaim your agency over those things? If you're feeling some self-isolation, maybe some disconnection, time to reach out and reconnect. And finally, if you are doing things that are feeling more destructive, leaning on substances, things like that, might be time to seek some formal support. So this is, not a, again, prescriptive way to deal with things. This is just meant to be a visual so that you can think about, oh, I'm noticing X. That means maybe I can start thinking about doing Y. So go ahead and throw into chat for me, what is one of your signs that you know that your mental health is taking a hit or that something's going on for you emotionally, the stress is hiking up? Think about that and let me know in that chat. For me, that irritability or kind of like a shutting down is something that happens. Yeah, lack of motivation, that's a big one, just kind of burning out so much that you're like, I don't even have the energy to do this. Neglecting healthy habits. Yeah, absolutely, Caitlin. Yep. Sleeping too much. Okay, Lynn. Yes, that's really specific. I love it. Or not being able to sleep well. Absolutely. This is great. So in the times that we're noticing these things, we might start feeling worried. We might start feeling a little helpless, like, oh, this, like I'm not in a good place. But the better thing to think is, yay, okay, I'm noticing something. That means that I can choose what I'd like to do to address this. So let me get into this next thing. I see what you have just shared, Paul, and I'm hoping that maybe this next thing is going to help get to some of that kind of stress, the elderly parent caregiving stress. So we're starting small with our routine. And a lot of people ask me, okay, what is self-care? Is it like taking a lot of baths with candles? Is it doing a lot of meditation retreats and yoga? No, I mean, if you like doing those things, do them because they're going to be really nice for you and they're going to feel great. But self-care is really about caring for yourself by getting time back, by making sure you have what's necessary to meet your needs, by staving off burnout. And all of this can be done by setting better boundaries. So one of the main reasons why we tend to let our routines lapse is that those boundaries tend to lapse. We don't hold them or we don't set them, and other people's needs come in and take precedence over ours. So let's talk about how we figure out boundary setting. So here again is where we're going to be tapping into self-awareness. That's again like such a big emotional fitness trait. It's so foundational. That in and of itself takes some work. So we want to check in with ourselves about where we might feel resentment. Is it toward a person? Is it maybe someone who doesn't have to manage a chronic health condition, who's in your life and just doesn't understand your experience? Is it work stuff? Is it a project or a meeting or an obligation? Because resentment, this is where, where there's smoke, there's fire, just like in that last graphic I showed you. Resentment is an indication, it's a sign that there could have been a boundary set. It means that you overextended yourself in a way that you didn't want, but you didn't feel, for whatever reason, able to speak up about that or say no in the moment. So think about where and what you feel resentment toward. And then the second one is important. This is where we can practice mindfulness, because it's worth looking at the limit of our discomfort, but also pushing ourselves to tolerate. So for a lot of us, setting boundaries is really uncomfortable, so we don't do it. But would pushing ourselves through that discomfort to do something that's difficult actually help us out? Probably. So oftentimes this is where growth is, pushing through and tolerating some of this discomfort when it can benefit us. So check in with yourself if you're uncomfortable in a way that you can lean into and grow through, because I hear this a lot in my clinical work too. A lot of people don't like being that person who has to say no or be like, sorry, I can't do that. We want to be people pleasers, a lot of us. We don't want to cause any problems. And these are all the bad associations that get attached to boundary setting, as though we are not people who have our own needs and preferences and our own need to maintain our own mental health. So that is how I'm kind of talking about self-care here. Then it's important to identify what you need in those moments. Do you need to distract or push through or assert yourself or advocate? Do you need a buddy? So back to what do I need and how can I ask for it? And to jump off from that, boundary setting is also an opportunity to reflect on relationships, projects, job tasks that tend to demand a lot from you, and whether or not you want to make a change to that dynamic. So what are these things or people asking of me? Can I do it? Do I want to do it? How can I show up? And where's the line? What can I not cross, because it's going to then start taking a toll on me. Now, obviously, there are going to be times where we have to do a thing, even if we don't want to. There are obligations like caregiving or work responsibilities. And if that's the case, yeah, we usually heads down and power through. But having situations like that is part of life. We just want to understand, can I keep doing that? Is this a pace I can sustain? Or is there a different way for me to have balance? If I have some obligations here, where can I get some of my time back elsewhere? Also, a lot of times we feel like we don't have a choice when we might actually have a choice. So even just challenging those places where you feel stuck can be useful. And here's how you can think about starting to do that. Look at your calendar, your to-do list. When you feel the need to squeeze something in that someone's asking for, take a pause. And it's okay to say, I need some time to check if I am available for that. I'll get back to you. List out ways that you want to be spending your time. What are your priorities? What are those less important things? And if somebody's ask starts making you need to cross off something that is a priority, really consider that. What is that going to be like for you? So, for example, if you are deciding to go to somebody's housewarming party that you were invited to, you might decide, because social connection is really important to you, that you're going to pencil that in. Or you might decide that I need those Saturday afternoons to just decompress after a tough, stressful week. I'm going to decline. Those kinds of decisions. Let them be very deliberate. Now, as you're feeling pulled into taking something on that might not be the right thing, there's probably going to be like a little Jiminy Cricket telling you, oh, are you sure you want to do that? So you might feel regretful or resentful if you do take it on. Take note of those inner pangs. And then if you do end up in the middle of something that you don't want to be in, it's causing pain or damage or resentment, pay attention to that reaction in the moment and see if you can draw a boundary there and excuse yourself. So let's talk about specifics around the language of boundary setting, because people often ask me about this too. How do I even do it? So a great way to think about doing it is clarity and negotiation. So that's why we've got this formula here. We want to first be clear about what the boundary is. What is the need? What is the ask? And we want to also talk about the why. Like, why is this so important to me? Why am I asking for it? That can help with buy-in. Now, we don't have to explain ourselves all the time, but if we want the other person to meet us in this conversation and we're afraid that they might not, then expressing the impact is a great way to do that. And then the next thing is also a great way to recruit them onto our teams to figure out, okay, what can we do so that we both get what we need? So I found that approaching it this way can help us feel more empowered to set boundaries when we otherwise really don't want to. So the idea here is that people are going to be more likely to respect this boundary when they have context about why it's important to us, and they feel like they're part of the discussion and it's not some kind of rigid ultimatum. So let me give you a couple of examples about how this could sound. So you could say something like, hey, I'm unable to take on this new project. The additional stress could get in the way of time that I need and could aggravate a chronic condition. You can share as much as you are comfortable with there. Is there someone we can discuss delegating to? So see how you're offering another option. It's not just a straight no. They might be like, no, you have to take it. And then you can do this again. You can say, great, I'm a little bit concerned about the load on my plate. Is there something else we can look at maybe taking off or deprioritizing? So those are where you find your options. I may need extra time for bio breaks over the next few days. If you're having a flare up, if it's stressing you out and you want to ask for that time so it doesn't feel weird or uncomfortable, you can say something like, when I don't have access to that, it can be harmful, it can be uncomfortable. Can we make a plan to accommodate that? Or if rest and your schedule is really important, something like, hey, can we meet a little bit earlier for dinner? When I make late plans, it tends to throw off my sleep routine. So I'm open to discussing other times that could work for you. So here is how we are doing boundary setting, keeping that conversation open and using boundaries actually to strengthen our relationships as opposed to feeling fearful that they're going to do damage to them. Okay, now a couple of you in that chat said something about motivating, that can be a tough one, or we lose motivation when we start feeling really depleted. So let's think about this. How can I motivate myself and others to keep prioritizing routines? Because inevitably the people around us, if they stop working on themselves, that can take a toll on us too, right? So let's talk about motivation. There are a lot of potential different things that can be motivating to us. And what I keep saying is connect to your why. So why is this important to me? Is it a basic need like sleep or food? Is it, I really need to feel like I'm achieving something and growing? I need recognition. I need reinforcement. I need to make sure that I am meeting expectations that I have. Not too high ones, but realistic ones. So these could all be what tends to motivate us. My sense of self, who am I? How do I see myself? That could also be motivating. So if there's one thing that I know from years of therapy, my own and providing it to others, There's rarely one single answer to this. This motivation is a complex picture, like everything else. So, something that motivates you to do one thing might not be the same motivation you find to do something else. So, there might be a lot of stress around, I really can't handle another flare up. It's going to be so disruptive. You might feel very motivated to keep a certain plan or routine in place so that you don't feel that. Or you might feel like, hey, every time I go to this Pilates class or whatever, I feel really good and it helps with some of my pain. I'm going to keep doing that. So that is going to help with motivation. And on those days that you don't feel like it, that's when you ask yourself, okay, why do I not feel like it? Do I need rest? That's fine. Maybe I rest. Do I not feel like it because it's effort I don't want to put in, or I feel hopeless or helpless or alone? Those are all things that can be challenged. So I'm curious to hear from all of you in the chat of what I'm talking about here. What do you think motivates you the most? Is it getting those basic needs met? Is it having some sense of growth or achievement? Is it maintaining your physical health? Whatever that is, go ahead and throw it in that chat. What is motivating? Yeah, that sense of growth or achievement. That is a huge one, Dow. I'm with you. When you feel like you're moving forward and when that's even being recognized too externally, there's no shame in wanting that. That can be very motivating. Helping others. Okay. I love that, Caitlin, feeling like you're connecting to other people. I also want to make sure that helping others doesn't get in the way of helping yourself. So here is what we're going to talk about when it comes to things that derail our motivation. Could be things like, I don't have time, I don't know the first step, or I'm stuck in my inertia, like being on this couch feels way better than getting up off the couch. That's sort of the simplest form, but we generally want to stay in the state that we're in. Making change to that state can be uncomfortable and it can take effort, and we might be really afraid of what it looks like on the other side of that change. Our discomforts, we've been talking about this a lot, those habits that we've had in place to make us feel more comfortable, like maybe not speaking up or not setting boundaries. And our fears. What happens if I do this? What happens if I speak up? What happens if I ask for what I need? What happens if I prioritize myself? Are people going to think I'm selfish? Are people going to not have a good reaction to it? So it's worth exploring those fears so that we can start to debunk them and put our needs and priorities at the same level as others. Awesome. Being involved with others. Yes. Basic needs and physical health. Basic needs. Okay. Look at how often that one's coming up, especially when we're talking about our physical health. Basic needs like drinking water. That's like one of the first things I forget to do when I get really churned up. So yeah, this is great. Thank you all for sharing. Okay. So finally, that connect to the why slide, because I keep teasing it. This is the best way I have found to work on our motivation. Understanding how we're feeling about particular routines, exercises, and tasks. When we do things like procrastinate, it's not because we're lazy, it's because there's something about that task that's making us feel uncomfortable. We don't want to do it for some reason, but we tend to judge ourselves. And then the more we judge ourselves, then we feel more shame because it's taken us longer to do this task, and then it gets worse. So the more we can tune into what is feeling so difficult about this for me, and why do I want to get it done, right? What would it offer to me? What's important about this? What maybe is exciting about it? Going back to how does it contribute to your needs? Like if I get this done, I can start feeling less stress, more relief. What makes me feel obligated? How much of the stuff that you're doing is out of obligation versus out of your own self-propelled needs or goals? And what do I want to know more about? Maybe what am I curious about? Procrastination is a plague. Martine, we've got a lot of procrastination content. I am very familiar with procrastination, but I also talk a lot about how we combat it. And it's all about tuning into ourselves. What makes this thing hard and why would it be important for me to do? I don't want to write this email or make this phone call to my credit card company. But once I do, I'm going to feel better. If I don't, it is going to make me feel worse. I don't want to do it because that means I have to look at my financial reality and that's stressing me out. The more we can name all this stuff, the less it has a hold over us. Awesome. Okay. So, a couple of you in that poll mentioned that you are in therapy. So, if you're not in therapy, I get this question a lot. Do I need it? How do I know if I need to be in therapy? Is this the only way to work on my mental health? I've never done it before. I'm on the fence. So, there are a lot of reasons why people feel hesitant about this. I'm not going to tell you to do it or not, but I'm going to just, because I'm a therapist, I feel like I need to do some PSAs about therapy. So, +1 me in the chat if you've ever seen this kind of thing here, things being equated to therapy that are actually not therapy. So I've heard a lot of loved ones say this. Those in-laws that I'm hosting for Thanksgiving have been people who say this. And not only does it feel disrespectful to me as a therapist, but it can also be a harmful perpetuator of the stigma around therapy. So what this kind of messaging does is it makes people feel like they shouldn't need it and that everyday comforts should just be able to take the place of it, unless you're like really mentally ill or in crisis. So it can set people up to feel weak or shameful if they can't just get over their stuff themselves. It can also set people up to take therapy less seriously because they are equating it with some kind of frivolous luxury like wine or chocolate. So this grinds my gears, if you couldn't tell, because it is a personal affront, but it is also doing a disservice to all of us out there who could really benefit from talking to an impartial third party who can help you with your self-awareness and see some of the patterns and think about what your motivations and your goals are. So here is why it's gotten sort of a bummer reputation. A lot of us have these misconceptions about therapy, like it's just about complaining about your parents. And yes, talking about where some of your beliefs and feelings come from is important. We do examine history, but it's not about the blame game. It's about accountability. It's not just about crisis, it's about support, it's about growth. And some of you are expressing that growth and achievement is a big motivator for you. We are not trying to tell you what to do. As we've been saying this whole hour here so far, this is about you. You are who knows best for you, or who knows best about what's best for you. So someone else trying to tell you what that is not going to be helpful. And it doesn't mean that you're weak or incapable. Therapy is about getting to a place that you want to be in yourself and in your life. So the way it works is that frame that we create with the scheduled time and the amount of time and the place, that is all meant to create safety, within which you can then build a relationship with somebody. That trust can be really reformative, really reparative, and it can help you identify and examine patterns that can then empower you to figure out how you want to live your life differently, what you want to keep, what you want to change. And then if something happens between you and the therapist, it's also meant to be a safe environment that you can repair that relationship and create a model of how to repair relationships in the world, out in your life. So that's my spiel about therapy. But let me wrap this up by talking about others, because this is coming up in the chat too. Supporting others tends to be something that we are concerned with, and it tends to also be something that can be helpful to us. So if we're thinking about giving support, there's some things that we should be thinking about. First of all, we want to be proactive about seeking out somebody's needs beforehand. So before something gets missed, the more we can know about a person's needs, the better. So our empathy trait really talks about asking questions of people to help understand them so that we can be equipped with that knowledge. And then if they're having trouble finding the words to label those feelings, we can help them do that. I think a lot of people feel like, well, I have to help people solve their problems, or I need to fix things for them. No, you don't. That is likely, just like with therapy, it might not hit the mark. It might miss the mark in terms of what they need. The better thing for you to do is to be there to help them figure out what they can do and have them ask you if they need your support in actually doing it. And then finally, sometimes we might not be able to give support or take on things depending on the scope. And so that is where boundary setting comes in. If you're feeling like I have a limit to how much I'm going to be able to support this person right now, I'm going to let them know. And here is, a few ideas for how you can let them know. First of all, as simple as I hear you, thank you for sharing with me without feeling any further pressure or suggesting, hey, how comfortable would you be talking to someone professional about this? Because I think it's beyond the scope of what I can help you with. Is there someone I can help you reach out to? I can tell you're struggling and I'm worried about you. Things sound really hard right now. What can the people in your life help you with? Hopefully, other people in their lives can be identified so that you can do things in conjunction with others and you're not just alone with it. If you are trying to check in on others' wellness routines, similar questions that we're asking ourselves when we're checking in with ours. How are you feeling? What is this like for you? How can I support you? What are some things I can do to follow up and check in? So that's some language for you when it comes to others, but let me just sum up. Here's what we talked about today. Identifying your wants and needs. This is the biggest thing. It's going to help you inform your routines and your habits. Trusting your future self is big too. This came up a lot for me when I was going through chronic cystitis. Trusting that I was going to get through it was really the antidote to the fear and the anxiety about having the symptoms flare up. So the symptoms flaring up, that fear might hold me back from doing things that I want to do or make me feel kind of constantly in angst, but trusting that I knew how to handle it, I had what I needed for that, was how I got out of that. Listen without fixing when you're supporting others. Adjust your goals and your routines accordingly based on your needs. Check in with yourselves regularly and utilize the resources that you have at your disposal, those relationships, so you feel less alone. All right, so we have a few minutes to go over any questions you all might have. So this is your chance to chat me with any questions you have that I can answer for you before I wrap us up here. So we've got maybe about 6 minutes to go over some questions. So if anything, thoughts, concerns, but how, I am happy to answer. Let me think about other things. There is a question I tend to get. Where can you find resources if therapy might be out of your financial means? That's a great question, Libby. There are actually a lot of community agencies that provide therapy at different rates, sliding scale rates. They take all different kinds of insurance. I know a lot of therapists are not really in insurance networks. So if insurance is one of your priorities, there are organizations that will be able to service you. So I would look out for that. I like resources like goodtherapy.org, so you can search for the right fit. But check out what's in your community. There might be mental health agencies there where you can actually get one-on-one therapy at a lower cost or through your insurance. But great question. I know that tends to be a barrier for a lot of folks, but it still doesn't mean that you don't have to do it or you have to give it up. Supporting others can be emotionally draining at times. Yes, it can. How can I shield myself from being hurt or drained? Great question, Martine. So this is where boundary setting comes up. If you notice that there is a line at which it starts to become emotionally draining, that's the line to pay attention to. It sounds like, for the most part, I like supporting others, but this one friend tends to dump on me every time we go out, and it is so draining, and I never really get the support that I want from that friendship. So it's time to renegotiate that friendship. Maybe setting boundaries around how much time you do allow for those lunch or dinner dates. Really let there be a clear cutoff. I have a heart out. Or if you're feeling like it is one-sided, having a conversation like, hey, I am noticing that you tend to really feel stressed out and you talk about a lot of really overwhelming things when we're together. I don't always know how to help you with this. Is there a way that, we can find a different way to support you so we both get airtime in this conversation? So that goes back to our boundary BIN framework, boundary impact negotiation. So this is going to be case by case, relationship by relationship. Everything is going to be, individual. So you have to deal with each one as it is, but that's generally the rule of thumb. Noticing when you're drained, who drains you, and how you can shift that dynamic or speak up to it. Okay, oftentimes when chronic symptoms start to flare up repeatedly, I can feel defeated. Yes, I feel you. What are some mental fitness tools that can be used to help build resilience? Great question. So a lot of this goes back to what I was saying just now around trusting yourself. The thing about resilience is that it's not necessarily about us being able to spring into action. It's more about our ability to take care of ourselves emotionally when something happens. So these flare-ups, hopefully they're not inevitable. Hopefully you're finding some kind of end or some sort of relief or solution to them. But thinking about like, okay, this might happen. How do I support myself so that it doesn't destroy me? I can have all of the, logistical solutions and the medications and all those things in place. But it's going to also be about, okay, I've been through this before. I know how to pay attention to these signs. I know how to get through this suffering. I know who to go to. I know where my resources are. Trusting yourself that because you've been through this before, you will get through it again. That's a big part of resilience. And it's also about understanding where your options lie so that when you're feeling that helplessness or feeling defeated, that you remind yourself, okay, how did I get through this last time? What did I call on before? What was it like? So maybe keeping a journal about each one of those times could be helpful so that you can have something physical to remind yourself, okay, here's how I got through it last time, so that you feel like this isn't going to destroy me. This isn't going to defeat me. I've done this before. So trusting that you can handle it. We've got a lot of content on resilience too, so I hope you find that, Dow, because we've got a lot more we can talk about with this, but there's another question here. What can you do to improve your mental state in the middle of a chronic flare-up? Yeah, so you're talking about in the midst of the physical discomfort, maybe it's been disrupting a lot of things, you've had to cancel plans, you're feeling frustrated about that. There is a quote, I forget who says it. I'm a bad therapist right now for forgetting, but what you resist persists. So a lot of the time, the realities that we don't like, we resist, we push against them. And then rather than allowing ourselves to support ourselves through them, we have now created something that's even more difficult for us to tolerate because we're so anti this reality, which of course we would be, but that closes us off to understanding like, okay, I might need to just sit and breathe right now, or I am feeling so frustrated and so defeated and so in pain that I don't know what to do next. And just naming that can be way more helpful and constructive than railing against this reality that this is happening. I remember thinking a lot like, why is this happening again? This sucks. Like I thought I was doing everything. Like that is beating ourselves up. That's not helpful. So there's some mind tricks here, some Jedi mind tricks around not tearing ourselves down in the middle of it when something is already tearing us down. How can we build ourselves up and remind ourselves of our inner resources in the middle of that so that we can think about, okay, what do I need right in this moment? What can I get? Who can I call on? And just hold ourselves through the thing. I know that's kind of vague. We don't have a ton of time to talk about it, but there's so much to talk about here. So if you are interested in more of what COA does, I would encourage you to check out our resources. We have a mobile app that has daily exercises. We have that on-demand library of things, a lot of procrastination content on there, and we've got live classes too, so that you can bring challenges like this, like to our resilience class, for instance, and you can work on it in your own personal example with instructors who are therapists like me. So I certainly hope to see you in some of our classes. Thank you all. This was so wonderful. Before you thank